My name is Winifred Booker. I'm 84 years old and I've lived a full life. More full than most people can imagine. I was born during a dust storm in Kansas in 1941. I've seen my share of tragedy and triumph, raised 5 children, buried 1 husband, and walked with a straight back through every storm life threw my way. I never expected to end up here, alone in a house that used to sing with laughter, now so quiet it hums with sorrow. My son Bradley still calls sometimes. Quick calls. Weather updates mostly. Is the snow heavy out there, Ma? He'll ask, but never wait long enough for a real answer. His wife Jocelyn, well, she prefers to text. When she does say something to me in person, it always feels like she's reading off a card labeled, "Be kind to the elderly." I used to think Jocelyn and I were close. She came to me often when the babies were little, asking for recipes, tips, stories to help her feel like she was a good mother. I gave her everything. My time, my wisdom, my patience. I helped raise her 3 children when she was finishing nursing school. I rocked them through croup and fevers. I missed doctor appointments for myself so she could make hers. But somewhere along the way things changed. Became inconvenient. She started showing up less, talking less, looking through me instead of at me. And then one afternoon, while I was upstairs folding towels in the hallway linen closet, I heard her voice. She didn't know I was there. She was pacing the downstairs kitchen with her phone pressed to her cheek, ranting to someone. I assumed her sister. I swear if I have to hear one more story about the Great Depression from that sad old woman, she muttered, her voice sharp, tight with irritation. She smells like dust and talks like a scratched record. She just sits there, waiting for someone to notice her. It's pathetic. I stopped folding. I don't remember breathing. My fingers were frozen on a hand towel. My heart, though, it thudded like I was a girl again caught outside curfew. She's not even family, Jocelyn added, laughing. Just my husband's sentimental project. Not even family. Not even family. I backed away from the shelf, slowly, towel still in hand. I don't remember climbing down the stairs. I don't remember sitting in the chair at the bottom. I just remember the feel of the towel on my lap. The way it absorbed the tears I didn't let fall. You think after 84 years of living you can't be shocked anymore. But betrayal doesn't care how old you are. Finds you anyway. And that's when something inside me changed. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her. I didn't even cry. Not in front of her. Instead, I picked up my phone, the one she thought I didn't know how to use properly, and I found the voicemail app. I pressed record voicemail. I set it in the crack of the stair rail, just above where I'd been standing. And I waited. 3 days later she made the same call. Same kitchen. Same complaints. She didn't know the phone was there. But this time it caught everything. Every cruel word. Every sarcastic laugh. Every insult whispered like a curse. She never noticed the red light blinking behind the ceramic rooster on the shelf. And I saved it. For months I said nothing. Not to Bradley. Not to anyone. But I knew one day I'd need it. One day, her mask would slip. And no one would believe me unless they heard it for themselves. That day came faster than I expected. Bradley's company announced his promotion. And Jocelyn decided we needed a family reunion. Everyone was invited. Cousins, in-laws, neighbors from the old street. She booked a hall. Ordered a caterer. Hired a slideshow guy to run photos on a projector screen, complete with cheesy music from the 90s. She even asked me to write a little toast. Said it'd be good to include the elders. I said I'd be honored. And I meant it. Because I wasn't going to toast. I was going to tell the truth. But not in my words. In hers. The night of the reunion, I wore my best blue dress. The one my late husband said made my eyes look like evening skies. I pinned back my hair. I smiled at the great-grandchildren. Clapped during the slideshow. And then the microphone came to me. Before I say a word, I said calmly, I want to share something with all of you. Just a short voicemail I happened to receive. Took out my phone. Press play. And Jocelyn's voice filled the hall. She smells like dust. Talks like a scratched record. She's not even family. There were gasps. Forks dropped onto china. Bradley stared at the speakers like they had betrayed him. And Jocelyn. She turned a shade I can only describe as fear marinated in guilt. She tried to cut it off, but I held the phone high. Everyone heard every word. And I stood there, looking straight into the face of the woman who had erased me from her heart, watching her crumble in front of the people who had once admired her. 'Cause now they knew. They knew the truth. And I wasn't done. Like this story. Want to hear what Winifred does next? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I wasn't always the woman standing alone at a podium with a voicemail in hand. There was a time when this family looked to me as their compass. A time when I was the woman everyone came to when the lights went out, when the school called home, or when a pie crust wouldn't come together right. Back then, this house. It wasn't silent. It laughed, sang. It told stories through the cracks in the floorboards and the stains on the carpet from birthday punch spills. I built a life with Harold, my husband of 49 years. He passed away a few months shy of our 50th anniversary. And in that half-century together, we didn't just build a house. We built a legacy. Bradley was our only son. Our miracle baby after 3 miscarriages. I was 37 when he was born. Doctors told me not to get my hopes up, but Harold always said, "Faith builds things science can't explain." Bradley was the kind of boy who sang to the birds outside and cried when the neighbor's dog died. Sensitive. Weep. I remember his tiny hand wrapped around my pinky as he asked, "Mama, will you always be here?" I swore I would be. And I kept that promise. Every scraped knee, every science project disaster, every tear shed over a broken heart. I was there. When he married Jocelyn, I was hopeful. She was ambitious and sharp. Qualities I thought would balance his softness. But something about her always felt polished. As if the real version of her was under layers of social varnish. Still, I welcomed her. I gave her my mother's wedding ring to wear on her right hand during their rehearsal dinner. I helped sew her gown the night before the wedding when the hem came undone. When the babies came, Eli, Gemma, and then little Ollie, I was there every step of the way. Diapers, midnight feedings, lunchbox notes, preschool pickup lines. I sacrificed my own retirement plans to help raise them when Jocelyn went back to school to become a nurse practitioner. I never once complained. But slowly, things began to shift. It wasn't obvious at first. It started with the way Jocelyn stopped asking me for advice. Then, how she would roll her eyes at the stories I told the kids. She'd change the subject or talk over me during family dinners. She started calling me Winifred instead of Mom, a name that once only came from distant cousins or doctors' offices. Then came the subtle jabs. "I think it's great that you still wear lipstick at your age," she'd say, with that sugar syrup tone that always left a stain. "I read that memory loss starts earlier than we think," she once quipped, tapping her head and laughing after I misplaced my glasses, for the 3rd time that week. The worst part. Bradley never noticed. Or maybe he didn't want to. He was always working, traveling for conferences, head down in his job. Whenever he came home, Jocelyn put on a smile, the kids behaved, and the house glowed with a warmth I knew wasn't real. She painted a picture-perfect life while quietly cutting me out of the frame. I remember the first Christmas I didn't bake the pecan pie. Jocelyn said she wanted to start a new tradition. The kids barely noticed it wasn't mine. Then came Easter, when she forgot to mention the family brunch until the night before. And then the birthdays. One by one they stopped inviting me altogether. "Oh, it must have gotten lost in your inbox," she'd say with a shrug. When I asked the kids about it, they always seemed surprised. "Mom said you were too tired, Nana." I wasn't. I was erased. But what Jocelyn didn't know was that I had ears sharper than most. And a mind still sharper than she assumed. One afternoon, I was in the sunroom reading, half dozing, when her voice carried in from the kitchen. She was on the phone with her friend Claire. "She just lingers like a cobweb," Jocelyn said, laughing. "The kids are bored stiff. She tells the same old stories every time. Eli called her creepy last week." And blinked. "Creepy," she continued. Honestly, I wish she'd just stay in her room. Bradley doesn't get it. He still thinks she's some kind of saint. But she's in the way. I'm not running a retirement home. I pressed record on my phone. I had learned by then. She thought I couldn't hear her. But I could. Every word carved a mark into the walls I had painted with love. The walls where I had hung every handmade ornament, every crayon-drawn card, every family photo, until she started taking them down and replacing them with her curated, minimalist art pieces. One day, I walked past the hallway where the family tree collage used to hang. It was gone. In its place, a blank canvas with a quote in block letters that read, "Family is who you choose." I wasn't chosen anymore. And when I brought it up to Jocelyn, she smiled and said, "The hallway needed a refresh. Don't take it personally." But it was personal. So I started documenting. Quietly. I saved voicemails. Recorded conversations. Took photos of subtle things. My framed pictures left in boxes. My chair removed from the dining table. Notes left for the kids asking them not to talk to me when I was rambling. I created a folder on my old laptop called, "For Bradley." But even as I collected evidence, I still believed I could find a way back. I thought maybe Jocelyn was just overwhelmed. Maybe she needed grace. Until the morning she canceled my doctor's appointment. I'd been scheduled for a follow-up for my heart medication. I reminded her twice. "I know, Winifred," she said curtly. "I moved it. You need to rest more anyway." But when I called the clinic, they told me the appointment had been canceled outright. No reschedule. That night, I overheard her again. "She's going downhill fast," she whispered into her phone. "And the stress isn't good for the kids. I wish she'd just move into a facility." Facility. The woman who helped deliver her babies. The woman who bathed her children and taught them their ABCs. That woman was now a burden. So I stopped trying. I stopped talking at the dinner table. I stopped offering to help. I became the shadow she already believed I was. But I also started planning. Because while she thought she'd written me off like an outdated book, I was quietly rewriting the ending. One in which I would not be silenced. One in which the family would see the truth with their own ears. And I wouldn't have to say a word. Want to know what Winifred does next? Stay tuned to where we dig deeper into the unraveling facade of a perfect family, and the quiet strength of a grandmother scorned. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. I always believed that when you're surrounded by people who've built their love on lies, the truth becomes the sharpest tool you have. It was around early October when the family reunion was announced. Jocelyn stood in the kitchen that morning, spooning oat milk into her coffee like she was queen of a palace I once ruled. She spoke loud enough for me to hear. Everything she said lately was like a performance. "Bradley wants to invite everyone for a big family dinner," she said. "Thanksgiving isn't enough. We need a formal reunion. Something with speeches. Slideshow. A toast." She smiled wide, tapping the edge of her mug. "I already know exactly what I'm going to say. Something classy, you know. Uplifting." Bradley, as usual, nodded along while reading an email on his phone. "That sounds great, babe." And just like that it was decided. The family reunion would be hosted at the local event barn just outside of town. Fancy. Expensive. Jocelyn wanted fairy lights, a custom balloon arch, an open bar. Bradley, ever the peacekeeper, obliged. "You'll be there too, Mom," he said one afternoon as we sat on the porch. There was something in his eyes, like he was asking if I still had it in me to play along. To smile. To be the old version of myself I tucked away a long time ago. "Of course," I said, my hands folded over my lap. "Wouldn't miss it." But what I didn't tell him was that I already knew what my speech would be. And it wouldn't be a toast. It would be the truth. That next week, I made a quiet visit to the old electronics store downtown. The one run by Emmett Harper, a kind man whose son I used to babysit decades ago. He was always tinkering with old radios and scanners. Nostalgic stuff. "I need a voice recorder," I told him. "One that can play audio clearly. Loud." He didn't ask questions. I had everything else stored. Jocelyn's comments from months back, the one about me smelling like dust. The one where she told her friend Claire that I was the reason Gemma hated old people. Another where she bragged about replacing my seat at the dinner table with a potted plant because it looked better. Each clip was short, but together, they formed a mosaic of cruelty. I stitched them together into a single audio file. I named it The Dust Files. The night of the reunion arrived with a chill in the air and nervous anticipation in my chest. I wore a soft blue dress Harold loved on me. He used to say it made my eyes look like a winter sky full of stories. Bradley picked me up early. He was stressed, trying to remember names, confirm RSVPs, check on seating charts. I offered him a mint from my purse like I used to when he was a little boy about to give a class presentation. He smiled without looking. The barn was beautiful, I'll admit. Jocelyn had taste. There were Edison lights strung like stars, round tables with burlap runners and golden leaves, children chasing each other with juice boxes and sticky hands. Everyone arrived dressed up. Everyone smiled. Especially her. Jocelyn floated from table to table like she owned the air. Complimenting dresses, hugging aunts, shaking hands with Bradley's co-workers like a polished first lady of this little kingdom. I stayed quiet, observing. The slideshow was scheduled after dinner. Photos of the family, old and new. Laughter filled the barn as toddler photos popped onto the screen. Eli's first birthday. Gemma covered in spaghetti sauce. Ollie dressed as a pumpkin. Then came the toast. Jocelyn stood, holding a tall glass of champagne. She tapped it gently with her fork. I just want to say, she began beaming, how grateful I am to be surrounded by so much love. To be part of this big, beautiful family. Polite claps echoed through the barn. She continued, her voice warm. Family to me means legacy. Means showing up. Building each other up. Supporting one another across generations. She paused and looked at me directly finally. And sometimes it means knowing when to step aside and let the next generation carry the torch. I didn't blink. She lifted her glass. To the future. The crowd echoed. To the future. Then she smiled sweetly and nodded toward Bradley. And now my amazing husband has put together a little surprise. A musical tribute to our family tree. Music started to play. A soft piano version of What a Wonderful World. Photos continued flashing on the screen. But it was my turn now. While everyone watched the slideshow, I rose slowly from my chair and made my way to the DJ booth near the corner. I handed the sound tech a small flash drive and whispered, "After this song ends, please play this. Loud." He looked confused, but I had called ahead. I told him it was a special message from the family matriarch. He nodded. I returned to my seat. The slideshow faded. The music stopped. Then from the speakers came her voice. Clear. Crisp. Cruel. She just lingers like a cobweb. The kids are bored stiff. She tells the same old stories every time. Eli called her creepy last week. Gasps rippled through the room. Honestly, I wish she'd just stay in her room. Bradley doesn't get it. He still thinks she's some kind of saint. But she's in the way. I'm not running a retirement home. Silence. Then her laugh. That light, lilting laugh she used when she was being mean with a smile. She smells like dust. Gemma said so. I mean, bless her, but she talks so much I swear I aged 5 years during her story about soup. A collective hush fell over the barn. You could hear a fork drop. I stood. Low. Proud. I thought it was time, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in years, that you all heard what I've been hearing. The words spoken about me when no one thought I could hear. People turned. Some looked stunned. Some looked away. Jocelyn. Her face had drained to white. Gemma stared at her. Eli blinked rapidly. Even little Ollie looked confused. I turned to my son. Bradley, I said softly. I raised you to be kind. I didn't raise you to be blind. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I may be old. I may talk too much. But I remember everything. Every diaper changed. Every scraped knee kissed. Every late-night call when you needed help. Tears welled in my eyes. But I won't be made to feel invisible in the house I helped build. Then I looked directly at Jocelyn. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I won't carry your bitterness in my bones. And with that I left. I walked slowly out the front door of the barn, into the cool night air. Behind me the silence was thunderous. The next day, Gemma came to my porch. She held a bouquet of grocery store flowers and a shaky smile. "Nana," she whispered, "can I come in?" And one by one they came. Not because I demanded it, but because the truth has a way of calling people home. Was this moment satisfying? Just wait. The fallout, the tears, and the first spark of change in a broken family. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The morning after the reunion, the house was quiet, eerily so. Not the peaceful kind of quiet filled with birdsong or the hum of a coffee maker. No, this was the kind that hung in the air like fog. Heavy, unsettled, almost like the walls were holding their breath. I sat at my kitchen table, a steaming mug of black tea cupped between my palms. The newspaper lay untouched beside me. I wasn't reading anything that day. I didn't need to. The headlines of my life had already been written the night before. The voicemail, the slideshow, the silence that followed. For the first time in a long time I felt something I had forgotten the shape of: power. Not the loud, arrogant kind that Jocelyn carried around like a designer purse, but the quiet, resilient kind. The kind you earn with years of sacrifice, patience, and grace. Had spoken. And now, the consequences were theirs to carry. I didn't expect company that morning. Not after the show I put on at the family reunion. But then I heard it, the slow, uncertain knock on my screen door. I stood, walked over and opened it. Gemma stood there again. Still in her clothes from the night before, wrinkled and slept-in. She held a grocery bag in one hand and a red thermos in the other. "Hi, Nana," she said softly. I brought you soup." Oh, she remembered. "Come in, sweetheart," I said, pushing the door open wider. She stepped inside, glancing around as if seeing my home for the first time. Her eyes lingered on the faded photographs on the wall. Me and Bradley at his high school graduation. A younger version of myself holding baby Gemma in a sunlit park. Harold in his gardening overalls, grinning through dirt and sweat. Gemma placed the bag on the counter and turned to me. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't hear those things Mom said. She always told us you were just dramatic. That you didn't like her. That you made things hard." I said nothing. I wanted her to sit in that discomfort. "She said you didn't want to be part of the family anymore," Gemma continued, her voice cracking. "That you were tired of us." I raised an eyebrow. "Do I look tired of you?" "No," she said quickly, and tears filled her eyes. "You looked hurt, Nana. You looked like someone who had been carrying a lot." I nodded slowly and reached out to take her hand. "Honey, being hurt doesn't make me weak. It makes me human." She sobbed quietly as I pulled her into an embrace. We stayed that way for a long time, me holding her like I did when she was 5 and scraped her knees on the sidewalk. Only now the wounds were invisible, but just as real. Later that afternoon, a text buzzed on my old flip phone. From Bradley. "Mom, can we talk?" It was the first message I'd gotten from him in weeks that wasn't about groceries or doctor appointments. I didn't reply. Let him sit with it. Let him come to me. The second knock came that evening. I was watering my succulents by the window when I heard it. Firm. Measured. Almost rehearsed. Opened the door. Jocelyn stood on my porch. She wore a cream sweater and oversized sunglasses, even though the sun had long gone down. Her lips were tight, like she'd bitten into something sour and was trying not to spit it out. "May I come in?" she asked. "No." She blinked. "This will only take a moment," she continued. "I think it's important we clarify a few things." I tilted my head. "Clarify or rewrite?" She sighed. "Look, I'm sorry if what I said hurt you." chuckled. You're not sorry for saying it. You're sorry I played it. That shut her up for a moment. She shifted uncomfortably, then tried again. Bradley's embarrassed. He didn't know. The kids are confused. And now, everyone's looking at me like I'm some villain. And what would that make me? Asked gently. A ghost. She looked away. I didn't mean it like that, she mumbled. I was venting. I stepped forward, my gaze steady. Jocelyn, I wiped your daughter's tears when she had night terrors. I taught your son to tie his shoes. I gave up my travel fund to pay your mortgage the year Bradley lost his job. She swallowed hard. And you erased me from the family wall like I never existed. The words hung there like icicles. You don't have to like me, I said softly. But you will respect the role I've played in this family. I earned that. She nodded. Slowly. Awkwardly. I'll be leaving now, she whispered, turning to step off the porch. Just before she reached the last step, I added. And Jocelyn? He turned back. If you ever speak that way about me again, make sure your phone's not recording. She flinched, then walked away. That night, I sat down to write a letter. Not to her. To Bradley. I poured everything into those pages. My disappointments. My fears. My love. I reminded him of who I was before the gray hair and forgetful moments. I reminded him that being old didn't mean I had stopped paying attention. I ended it with one sentence. You can lose a mother through death or through disrespect. Choose wisely. I left the letter on his porch the next morning. By week's end, things had changed. Gemma came by daily. Sometimes to talk. Sometimes just to sit and color beside me. Eli, shy and awkward, texted me a photo of his school project. He'd chosen to write about his family hero. The picture was me holding him as a baby. And Bradley. He hadn't said much. But when I stopped by their house to drop off a pan of cornbread, I noticed something. The family photo wall had changed. There I was again. My wedding photo with Harold, a picture of me with the grandkids on the 4th of July. One of me laughing, flower on my nose, from a Christmas morning years ago. No one said a word about it. But that was fine. The message was clear. If you felt something reading this, leave a comment, share your favorite line, and don't forget to like and subscribe. There's more truth, more healing, and more to come in this powerful journey. The days after the reunion had a strange stillness to them, like the hush in the air right after a storm, when even the birds don't dare chirp. The kind of quiet that makes you wonder what's next, peace or another blow. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid of what was coming. I wasn't waiting for someone to rescue me. I was standing in the center of my own life again. And that scared them, not me. Gemma kept showing up. At first it was just soup and nervous smiles, but by the third day she was asking questions. Real ones. The kind a granddaughter asks when she starts seeing you not just as Nana, but as a woman with her own story. Why didn't you ever say anything, Nana? She asked one afternoon, curled on the living room carpet with old photo albums spread between us. Why didn't you tell Dad or me what she was saying about you? I sipped my tea before answering. Because when you've been gaslit long enough, I said quietly, you start to question your own memory, your own worth. And after a while, silence feels safer than another confrontation you're told you imagined. Gemma looked like she wanted to cry. Instead, she placed her hand over mine. I believe you now, she whispered. I believe everything. That was the moment I decided to show her the notebook. Not many people knew about it. Not even Harold, may God rest his sweet stubborn soul. I had kept it tucked away in the bottom drawer of my nightstand, behind my hot water bottle and a stack of old birthday cards. I handed it to her gently, almost like it was a child. What is this? She asked. My memory keeper, I said. Every time something happened that made me question my worth in this family, I wrote it down. Not just the hurt. The beautiful things too. The quiet moments. The sacrifices. The love. She opened to the first page and began reading. May 3, 1998. Held baby Gemma for the first time. She smelled like milk and hope. I cried the whole way home. October 14, 2002. lent Jocelyn $3,200 to pay off credit cards. Told her it was a gift. It wasn't. Harold and I canceled our anniversary trip to Savannah. And later still. March 28, 2015. Jocelyn said I ruined the table setting by bringing my own pie. Said I was too old-fashioned. And told me to just sit and rest. Gemma flipped through page after page. Some entries made her laugh softly. Others made her grip the notebook tighter. She read about birthdays I planned, dance recitals I drove them to, doctor's appointments I sat through alone. "This is a life," she murmured. "No," I corrected. "This is my life. The one they pretended didn't matter anymore." She reached the end of the notebook and found a final, unfinished entry. August 17, 2025. Played the voicemail. Watched the room go silent. Jocelyn's face turned to stone. But Gemma looked at me like she remembered who I was. That night, I found a folded note on my porch. It was written in Bradley's handwriting. "Mom, I don't know where to start. But I'm listening now. Please don't shut me out." I sat on the porch swing for a long time holding that letter, thinking. It was tempting to write him off. To make him feel what I had felt all those years. The slow erosion of affection. The sting of being second, then third, then forgotten. But something in me still hoped. Not for a perfect ending. Just an honest one. I wrote back the next day. "Come over Sunday. Don't bring flowers. Just bring the truth." And he came. So did Bradley. He stood in my living room looking like a boy who'd lost his bike. All slumped shoulders and darting eyes. "I'm sorry," he said before I could offer tea. "I should have paid more attention." "You were busy," I said. "Raising a family. Building a life." "But that life was built partly by you," he said. "And I let her erase that." I nodded slowly. "And now?" He looked me dead in the eye. "Now I want to rebuild it. With you in the picture. Not just the background." I didn't cry. Not yet. I just reached for his hand. And that was enough. But peace doesn't sit long when people like Jocelyn are involved. By Tuesday, word had gotten around town. Jocelyn had been uninvited from 2 social luncheons, and her cousin, who ran the family's estate trust, had called me directly. "I didn't know," he said solemnly. "None of us did. But that voicemail, it changed everything." He offered to amend the trust to include a formal clause protecting my rights to the family property. I declined. "I've got something better than paperwork," I told him. "What's that?" he asked. "My voice." He chuckled. "Well, it's working." What happened next wasn't explosive. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow justice. The kind that creeps in like a tide. The grandkids stopped asking Jocelyn for rides and started coming to me for stories. Bradley began hosting Sunday dinners at my house again. Even Jocelyn's friends, the women who once sneered at me behind manicured smiles, began waving politely at the market. But the moment I knew things had truly shifted, I caught Jocelyn in the church hallway weeks later. She walked by, then paused. "I guess you got what you wanted," she muttered. "No," I said, turning to her. "I got what I deserved." She didn't respond, just walked away. And I didn't follow. The notebook now sits on my mantel, its pages worn and full. But I've started a new one. This time it's not a record of pain. It's a collection of moments that remind me who I am. Strong, loved, and seen. Finally, if this story made you feel something, leave a comment with a line that hit your heart the hardest. Don't forget to like and subscribe because Nana's stories aren't over yet. And neither is her fight for dignity. There's a sound I'll never forget. It's not the voicemail. Not the rustling of pages in my memory notebook. Not even Jocelyn's voice, laced with disdain. It's the sound of a door clicking shut. Softly. As if the one closing it wants you to believe they'll be back soon. That it's just temporary. That's the sound I lived with for years. Every time someone I loved chose to walk out emotionally before they ever left physically, there was always that soft click. I'd heard it so many times I thought I'd grown numb. But I wasn't numb. I was just waiting. When Jocelyn's humiliation at the reunion spread through our small town, she did what women like her always do: retreated into silence and subtle revenge. She didn't come out guns blazing. No, Jocelyn was more surgical than that. She started with Bradley. Little whispers. Seeds of guilt. She's manipulating you. She waited until everyone was watching. She made us all look like villains. Then it was Gemma. I raised you better than to betray your own mother. I gave you everything. Don't let her rewrite our story. But the problem was, I had never asked anyone to choose sides. They simply saw the truth for the first time. And the truth had weight. The kind that tips scales and topples the illusions built on convenience and comfort. That autumn, the trees turned later than usual. The air stayed warm longer, almost as if nature itself was holding its breath. Bradley and Gemma kept visiting, but there was a tension behind their eyes. Like they were caught between mourning the woman Jocelyn had become and learning to love the one I had always been. One evening, Gemma stayed late after dinner. She helped me fold linens, the kind of chore Jocelyn would have called beneath her. As we tucked the last sheet away, she turned to me. "Nana, do you think people really change?" I looked at her, this young woman I once bathed in a sink, now grown, questioning love and loyalty and bloodlines. "No," I said honestly. "I think they reveal." 2 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You've turned them all against me. But don't forget who signed your power of attorney." It wasn't signed, but I knew Jocelyn's handwriting better than my own. She didn't understand. That power she thought she held over me. It had expired the day I installed the hidden camera in the hallway mirror. The day I recorded her telling my nurse to cancel my cardiologist appointment. The day I documented every pill she forgot to give me, every appointment rescheduled, every small cruelty masked as caretaking. I hadn't taken her threats lightly. I had lived too many years being starved of affection, agency, and acknowledgement. This wasn't just about inheritance or holiday invitations. This was about a woman who used silence as her shield. But I wasn't quiet anymore. I called my attorney, Walter Greeley, who had handled my original will after Harold passed. He came to the house personally, eyes wide when I handed over the flash drive. "You've got enough here," he said slowly, "to get her removed from every legal connection to you. Conservatorship, medical proxy, even beneficiary claims if that's what you want." He nodded. "Do it." He paused. "Are you sure? This isn't just paperwork. This will make things final." I looked out the window, where Bradley was helping Gemma rake leaves into golden piles. "I've lived in a house where I was only remembered when they needed something," I said. "I'm ready to be the one doing the remembering, not the forgotten." The changes were swift. Jocelyn was removed from all medical and financial authority. A new will was notarized and filed. My nurse, Maybelle, now reported to Gemma and me directly. Even the local pharmacist, who once sheepishly admitted Jocelyn had been picking up half my prescriptions, reached out with an apology and an offer to hand-deliver my medications from now on. Bit by bit, I was reclaiming what had been quietly taken, not through screaming or scandal, but through careful, deliberate action. The kind Jocelyn never expected. One Sunday, Bradley came over alone. No wife, no grandkids, just him. He sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where he once did homework while I stirred stew. "I don't know who to believe anymore," he said. I let that silence settle before answering. "You don't have to choose who to believe, son. Just ask yourself who had the most to gain by keeping you from the truth." His eyes filled but no tears fell. "I want to believe you," he said. "I don't need belief," I told him. "I need action. And you have to choose what kind of man you're going to be. One who repeats the pattern, or one who breaks it." That night Gemma came by with cookies. Store-bought, which she apologized for, though I didn't mind. As we sat by the fire, she handed me a framed photo. It was from the reunion. The moment right after the voicemail played. When the room was still frozen. But in the corner, barely visible, was Gemma. Her eyes locked on mine, her expression a mixture of shock and admiration. "I asked the photographer for it," she said. "Because that's the moment I realized you were never weak." I held the frame gently. "You were just holding back," she added. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves scattered across the lawn, and the scent of chimney smoke carried memories from years past. But I wasn't looking back with longing anymore. I was standing in the present, rooted and real. This was my story now. And I was finally the one turning the pages. If this story reminded you that strength doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers and still wins, drop a comment below and tell me your favorite moment. And don't forget to subscribe. There's a peculiar hush that comes just before a storm. Not the kind that lashes trees or floods streets, but the kind that sweeps through families. Quietly, inwardly. A hush that presses against the walls of a home, waiting for someone to break the silence with a truth too heavy to ignore. That was the kind of storm I was preparing for. A week after Bradley left the kitchen in tears, he sent me a text. Just one line. "Can I come up to the attic with you?" I stared at it for a moment, stunned. He hadn't set foot in the attic since he was 12 years old, when he dropped a box of ornaments and Jocelyn yelled at him for breaking family history. He hadn't even asked what was in the attic. He just wanted to come with me. I typed back. "Be here at 4. Wear old clothes." The attic was more than a storage space. It was a vault of forgotten moments. Baby shoes, journals, Christmas cards that never made it to the mailbox. And photographs, dozens of them, of a life I had lived, alone and quietly, while raising children who grew up and married women like Jocelyn. Bradley climbed the ladder behind me, slower than I remembered. He was older now. Not a boy, not yet gray. Somewhere in that foggy middle where men start to realize the weight of their decisions. As his head cleared the top step, his eyes swept over the boxes. "What are we looking for?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "We're remembering." We sat on a worn quilt as I opened the first box. Inside were cassette tapes labeled in my handwriting. Bradley, age 3. Gemma's first recital. Harold's last Christmas. He picked one up and stared. "You kept these?" He nodded. "Even when you forgot to call? Even when you didn't visit?" His eyes brimmed, but I didn't push. I just reached for the next box. Inside were letters. Hundreds of them. Some from my late husband, Harold. Some from friends I'd lost to time. A few from church ladies who used to visit before Jocelyn told them I wasn't up for company anymore. I handed Bradley one of Harold's. He read silently, lips trembling. "He loved you so much." "I know," I said. But even his voice faded when I stopped speaking mine. Then came the photo albums. One by one we flipped through birthdays, graduations, beach trips, and back porch cookouts. Jocelyn was in them all. Smiling, poised, pretending. But as the years wore on, something changed. Less warmth in her eyes. Less me in the photos. By the end I was behind the camera, or worse, erased entirely. "I never noticed this before," Bradley said quietly. "That was the point," I replied. She counted on no one noticing. He turned the final page and gasped. It was a photo of me holding Gemma on the day she was born. The nurses had forgotten to snap one for Jocelyn, so I had taken it. "She never showed me this," he said. "She said it was just a messy moment," I answered. "But I kept it. Because it was real." As we closed the albums, the light from the attic window cast a golden glow on the dust. Bradley looked at me like he was seeing his mother for the first time. Not the woman Jocelyn described, not the burden she painted me as, but a grandmother who had been the backbone of his childhood. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" he whispered. Exhaled. "Because you wouldn't have believed me then. You weren't ready. People have to feel the lie in their bones before they look for the truth." We descended from the attic slowly. Before leaving, Bradley paused at the hallway mirror, the one I'd hidden the camera in. He traced the frame with his fingers. Is this? He nodded. It caught more than you want to know. I want to know now, he said. All of it. That evening we watched the footage together. Jocelyn berating Maybelle. Mocking my forgetfulness behind my back. Canceling my prescription refill and laughing about how the old bat doesn't need her blood pressure pills if she just stays in bed. Bradley didn't speak through it. When it ended, he sat perfectly still. Then he stood, walked to the coat rack and grabbed his keys. Where are you going? I asked. To get my kids, he said. And tell them who you really are. He returned an hour later. Gemma and her younger brother Elijah were with him. Their eyes were red, but they were smiling. They didn't say much, just hugged me tightly like they were afraid I might disappear. And in that moment, something I'd carried for years, something too heavy to name, finally lifted. Not because I had punished Jocelyn, but because I had restored myself. Outside, the storm broke. Rain tapped gently on the windows. The hush was gone. And in its place was the sound of something beginning again. If you've ever waited for someone to see the truth, only to realize you held the truth all along, drop a comment below. Tell me your story. And if you're ready for the next moment, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. The journey isn't over yet. The morning after the children came back to me, there was a knock at the door. Not Bradley. Not Gemma. Not Elijah. It was Jocelyn. She stood on the porch with a forced smile stretched across her powdered face. Her hands clutching a Tupperware dish like it was an offering to the gods of guilt. Hi, Mavis, she said sweetly, like she hadn't spent the past few years slowly turning my home into a prison. Thought I'd drop by with some lemon bars. Your favorite. I didn't reach for them. I didn't smile. I just held the door still like stone. She blinked, confused. Aren't you going to invite me in? No, I said. Not today. The smile dropped. You know, she said slowly, lowering the Tupperware like a weapon holstered back into its sheath. Bradley came home last night saying some very concerning things. About footage. About you telling lies to the kids. I think maybe we should sit down. Have a calm discussion. I stared her down. Oh, I agree. Just not here. And with that, I handed her a small, cream-colored envelope. She took it, opened it slowly, and when her eyes skimmed the letter inside, her face drained of color. You had no right. I had every right, I cut in. I lived in that house. I was humiliated in that house. And I recorded the truth in that house. It's done. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The sound of car doors clicking open behind her made her flinch. Bradley, Gemma, and Elijah were getting into my car. Headed to the church potluck where I had been invited as honored guest. Jocelyn wasn't invited. For the first time she looked small. Sure. She looked just like a schoolgirl caught cheating on a test and realizing the teacher had the proof in her hand. I don't know what game you're playing, Mavis. This isn't a game, I said, voice even. You gambled with my love, my life, and my legacy. And you lost. Then I shut the door. The church potluck was something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. Homemade pies, gingham tablecloths, and kids running barefoot in the grass. People gasped when they saw me. Mavis. Good heavens, we thought you were too sick to come out. Smiled. Turns out I'm not the one who was sick. After the hymns and the fried chicken, Bradley stood up with a piece of paper. Before we say grace, I want to tell you all a story, he said. Everyone quieted. He looked at me, and his voice trembled as he read. This is for the woman who taught me that chocolate chip cookies are a love language. Who sat through all my middle school saxophone concerts. Who once sold her wedding ring to buy me a laptop for college. Years. He continued. And who was almost erased from our family by someone who thought silence could replace love. He paused, then looked out across the room and added, We know the truth now. And we are not ashamed to say, we choose her. The whole room applauded. Someone began to cry. I couldn't tell if it was me or one of the cousins. Maybe both. The news spread quickly. Not just through the family but through the whole town. People who hadn't seen me in years started showing up at the door. "I'm so sorry, Mavis. We didn't know." I believed what Jocelyn said. "I feel terrible." One by one they returned. Some with flowers, some with hugs, all with regret. And through it all, I didn't gloat. I didn't scream or curse or demand apologies. I simply listened. Because the truth, once set free, speaks louder than any lie. But Jocelyn wasn't done. Of course she wasn't. She started whispering. Telling neighbors I had edited the footage. Telling the kids I was manipulating them. Telling Bradley that maybe I was slipping mentally, that maybe, just maybe, I needed to be watched again. But it didn't work this time. Because now I wasn't alone. I had allies, witnesses, people who had heard the voicemails, seen the tapes, watched how she dismissed me as a burden and laughed about it. More importantly, I had them, my grandchildren, my son. The cracks in Jocelyn's mirror started to spread. By the end of the week, she stopped returning people's calls. The woman who once controlled every room with her designer handbags and thin smiles was suddenly no longer welcome in the places she had lorded over for years. One afternoon, Gemma sat on the porch swing beside me. "Do you ever feel angry?" she asked. I looked at the sky. I did. For years. But then I realized anger keeps me tied to her. Truth sets me free. She nodded, processing. "You're better than I thought, Grandma," she said. "I always was," I replied. "You just had to see it for yourself." And just when I thought the dust had settled, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. I opened it and nearly dropped it. Inside were 3 printed pages. Legal papers. A statement of intent to challenge the first will I had shown Bradley. Signed by Jocelyn herself. I folded the papers slowly. And then I smiled. Not out of fear. But because I had something she didn't know about yet. To something that would make the final chapter more explosive than she could imagine. And I intended to use it. Don't miss what's coming next. You won't believe what that key unlocks. If you've ever been underestimated, erased, or replaced, only to rise stronger, drop a comment below. And remember, like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to take back your power. The letter Jocelyn sent, her threat to challenge the will, was desperate. It screamed of someone losing control. But the thing that made me laugh, really laugh for the first time in weeks, was the irony of it all. Because Jocelyn thought she had already seen the full extent of what I had prepared. She hadn't. The key she didn't know about wasn't just a metaphor. It was real. A little brass skeleton key, tucked inside the hem of the quilt my late husband, Alton, and I used on cold winter nights. She'd never think to look there. No one would. That quilt had holes and worn seams. Jocelyn had once said, "We should just throw this thing out. It smells like the 1970s. She never realized it guarded a lifetime. The next morning, I pulled the quilt out from my hope chest and ran my fingers along the edge until I felt the faint lump stitched into the seam. I tugged the thread gently, pulled out the key, and walked slowly to the back of the hallway closet, past the old coats, past the umbrella stand, until I reached the small safe buried beneath stacked shoeboxes and brittle tax folders. I hadn't opened it in 20 years. Inside was a lockbox, the kind Alton brought home from the army surplus store after his discharge. Steel, heavy, rusted at the hinges, but still strong. Inside a flash drive, a journal, and 2 cassette tapes, labeled in Alton's blocky handwriting. And below it all, the original notarized will. Not the copy I gave to Bradley. Not the version Jocelyn tried to replace with her own forged nonsense. This one was the version Alton and I had drawn up before the dementia took his memory, and her manipulation poisoned our household. And this version, this one named me as the trustee. Not Jocelyn. Not even Bradley. Me. I didn't waste a second. I called Mr. Renshaw, our old family attorney. He was retired now, nearly 80 himself, but sharper than ever. He was the one who helped Alton and I draft that original will, and when I told him what Jocelyn was trying to do, he let out a low whistle. "I always suspected she'd try something like this," he said. Good thing you're 10 steps ahead. He told me to bring everything, the drive, the tapes, the will, directly to him. So I did. He made copies of everything. Hired a forensic document examiner to authenticate the signatures. Then he made one more call. To a lawyer friend who just so happened to specialize in estate fraud. Jocelyn didn't know it yet, but the trap she had set for me was already swinging back at her. Steel teeth and all. While the lawyers worked, I got a text from Gemma. "Grandma, are you free to talk tonight? Something's happened." I told her to come over after dinner. She arrived with Elijah and a backpack full of papers. "Mom's freaking out," Gemma said as she sat down. "She said she's going to fight for Dad's assets, and she told us not to trust anything you say." I didn't flinch. "She said the whole thing at the reunion was just a stunt. That you're turning us against her. She's afraid," I said simply. Elijah looked at me. "Why? You're just Grandma." I smiled at that. "Exactly," I said. "And she knows that even being just Grandma is powerful enough to take back everything she tried to steal." I pulled out the flash drive. "What's that?" Gemma asked. "Proof," I said. "Want to help me watch it?" We plugged it into my laptop. The first video was dated 6 years ago. Footage from the security system I had installed before Jocelyn moved in, when Alton's memory started fading and I felt things shifting. On screen, Jocelyn stood in the kitchen talking on her phone. Her back was to the camera. "She's just sitting there again," she was saying. "She wears that same sweater every day. Like some tragic old widow in a Hallmark movie." Gemma covered her mouth. "She's so damn nosy. She hears everything. I keep telling Bradley she's going senile, but he won't listen. He feels guilty." "Ugh," Elijah muttered. "Wow." The second clip was worse. Jocelyn rifling through my purse. Counting the money in my wallet. I'm doing her a favor. She doesn't need all this cash. She can't even walk to the store anymore. My voice trembled. But not from fear. From power. 'Cause now they saw. Not just heard rumors or read letters. They saw it. Gemma looked at me through tears. "I'm so sorry, Grandma." "You have nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart." Elijah asked. "What are you going to do with this?" "Let the lawyers handle it," I said. "I've fought enough battles in silence. Now the truth will speak for me." The next morning, Jocelyn showed up again. This time with her attorney. Her face was red. Her heels clicked like gunshots on the porch tiles. "Mavis, we need to talk," she snapped. "Good," I said. "So does my legal team." I opened the door just enough to reveal Mr. Renshaw and the estate fraud attorney seated calmly in the front room, sipping tea like it was a Sunday morning brunch. Jocelyn's jaw slackened. Her attorney's eyes darted toward mine. "I believe this is your copy of the will," I said, handing him the notarized version. "And here are recordings, dated and time-stamped, which I'm prepared to submit as evidence in court." Jocelyn's voice cracked. "You recorded me." I raised an eyebrow. "You said I was too old, too quiet, and too forgetful to notice. Turns out you were wrong." When she left, she didn't slam the door. She just walked away. For once, she was the one no one believed. And as I closed the door behind her, I felt the years fall from my shoulders like dust. The house was finally quiet. Not from neglect or abandonment, but from peace. True earned peace. If you've stayed with me this far, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs the reminder that the quiet ones always see the most. The holidays came, soft and bright like they used to. For the first time in years, there was no tension threading the air. No hushed conversations behind closed doors. No fake smiles stretched thin across strained faces. Just laughter, clinking dishes, and the quiet thrum of warmth that a true family gathering should bring. I hadn't expected much that year. After everything with Jocelyn, I thought perhaps the dust would take a little longer to settle. But something beautiful happened instead. My grandchildren chose me. Again and again in little ways that filled my chest so full. I often had to step away just to breathe. Gemma started stopping by every Friday after work with leftover coffee and stories about her students. Elijah, who once barely said 2 words around me, now lingered after Sunday lunch, helping me change light bulbs or clean the gutters without being asked. Even Bradley, my son who had once looked right through me, had begun to truly see me again. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was honest. And that was more than enough. Then came the moment I never expected. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, the afternoon light slanting through the curtains, when I heard the knock. Not on the front door. On the back porch, the one no one used anymore. The one facing the pine trees Alton had planted when Gemma was born. I opened the door and there she stood. Jocelyn. She didn't have her usual armor on. No heels, no designer scarf, no clipped tone. Just jeans, a windbreaker, and tired eyes that seemed smaller than I remembered. "I came to say I'm sorry," she said quietly. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. "You were right," she continued. "About the will. About everything. They all saw the videos, tapes, the statements from your doctors and the records you kept. You didn't forget a thing." "No," I said softly. "I didn't." She looked down at her hands. "I thought if I made you seem invisible, if I took your voice away, I could replace you. But they didn't choose me, Mavis." "No," I repeated. "Because love isn't something you steal. It's something you earn." She nodded, and for a moment I thought she might cry. But she didn't. Jocelyn wasn't made of tears. She was made of pride and strategy, and now regret. I wanted to explain myself. I held up a hand. "That's not necessary." She blinked. "It's not." I shook my head. "What matters now is not what you say. It's what they say when they look at me. And what they don't say when they look at you." Jocelyn took a deep breath and nodded. "Goodbye, Mavis. Goodbye." She turned and walked away. Not defeated, just dismissed. Not banished, just irrelevant. And for the first time I realized I didn't hate her. I didn't even pity her. I had simply outgrown her shadow. Christmas Eve came like a soft miracle. The house was full again. The good kind of full. Children running barefoot across the living room. Smells of cinnamon and cider curling through the air. Laughter, loud and honest, rolling down the hallway. Gemma stood at the kitchen table, decorating cookies with her little niece, her sleeves dusted in flour. Elijah strummed his guitar by the fire. Bradley carved the roast while humming an old tune Alton used to sing. And I sat in my armchair watching. Not from the sidelines. From the center. No one rushed me out of the way. No one sighed at my stories. In fact, Gemma asked if I would read the kids the night before Christmas before bed, like I used to when she was little. I picked up the old book and opened it, my voice steady and warm. And I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight. "Merry Christmas to all," I read, looking up and meeting the eyes of every person in that room. "And to all a good night." As the night wore down and the dishes were done, Gemma brought me a small package. Inside was a frame, silver-edged, heavy in the hand. Held a new family photo. All of us taken earlier that evening. Kids and grandkids, arms wrapped around one another, smiling wide. The center sat me. And beneath it, in elegant script, the words, "Matriarch, Memory Keeper, Our True North." I looked up and met her eyes. "I had them print this first," she said. "It's already hanging in the living room." I tried to thank her, but my voice caught. Some stories don't end in revenge. Some end in redemption. In a quiet, powerful rise from silence. And in a truth so undeniable, it doesn't need to be shouted. It only needs to be lived. Lived mine. And now, I get to rest in the center of the home I built, knowing I was never invisible. Just waiting for the right moment to be seen. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what's one family tradition or memory you'll never let anyone erase? Thank you for watching. Until next time, remember, the quietest voices often carry the loudest truths.